first question I had for both of you, which I am very excited to hear the answer to, is what was the collaboration process like with making the story of this series? Mixing in real life events with some dramatization and kind of just how that process went. Because I feel like, in my research, it seemed like there was, some leaps and bounds taken, very simple stuff with like names and things like that. But I was kind of curious, like what it was like putting all the puzzle pieces together of how making this, 8 episode narrative TV series.
Well, this has been a process of 5 years, which is incredible to even think of, and a very long relationship and a relationship of trust with Jen to take the helm of it. I surrendered a big chunk of about 3 years worth of letters from my father, some open, some unopened, to Jen. And yeah, I think from there, Jen, you want to
Yeah, I mean,
expand?
Melissa just was a dream to work with and really gave me full creative control and was like, I told my story my own way
Yeah.
through my book and through the podcast and through going on talk shows that I would love for this to take on a life of its own. And so when I pitched to her to try to convince her I was the right writer, I said from the beginning that I would fictionalize it to some degree. I wanted to protect the privacy of the people who weren't involved in the making of the show. And also, I think I just saw an opportunity to make a kind of tell a bigger story about true crime and kind of the role it plays in our culture. And, Melissa's emotional story is amazing and is the heart of the podcast and the heart of the show, but it's not necessarily like a suspenseful engine to carry a crime drama forward. So I knew I wanted to add a fictionalized plot to kind of give us that energy and that would underpin Melissa's emotional story.
Question for you, Melissa. You just mentioned it, how you have a book, the podcast obviously was a big hit, now a TV series. Is this kind of the last chapter, you think, of telling this story?
Well, I think it's a story bigger than myself, which that's why I said to Jen, like you can fictionalize it because there's themes that happened in my life, things that happened and themes that happened in my life that I never felt that were portrayed in fictionalized series. Like with serial killers, you just really see the serial killer. You don't see the relationships between serial killers and their family, the perpetrator's family with the victim's family, or in the totality of all crime survivors and their relationship with true crime and the media. And so those were the bigger themes that Jen got to take advantage of showcasing because of the medium of it being fictionalized.
One thing that I noticed in the series is just that the heart of it, in many ways, is that relationship between you, Melissa, and the character in the show and her dad. Was that ever, I guess for both of you, was that really like a big part? I know you mentioned like the letters you just said. Like, was that a big part of the creation of the series? And also for you specifically, Melissa, was that ever emotional, kind of like watching that play out, like by actors portraying those scenes?
I'm really astonished in a good way that it was played out like that because the actors could have just taken the physicality of my father being 6'6" and just intimidating in nature and stature. But the real threat for me as his daughter and the real fear was just the emotional and the manipulation aspect was the fear of my father, that he was always looming, he was always there in the background and was always making his presence known to me and my family, that I can't escape him. And that I feel like it was definitely portrayed on screen.
Yeah, and it
Um,
was definitely at the heart of the show for sure. I think you really need, I think the center of the show is, you know, can you love a monster? And what that inner conflict is like to have these happy memories with someone who is capable of doing these horrible things. And how do you negotiate that, and how do you come to terms with that? And obviously we all, very few people have that specific experience, but I think a lot of people can relate to, finding out stuff about your parents or other family members, and having to make sense of terrible things that happen.
One
Thank
thing
you.
I noticed while watching it, which I was really excited to ask you guys, it kind of feels like Ben, as Melissa's husband, is pulling her one way, and Ivy is kind of pulling her another way, almost like as an investigative like producer in this case. So I was kind of just curious, if you guys picked up on that. I'm sure obviously you did by the resounding nods. But I just kind of was curious, like your guys' take on that and like exploring both of those avenues in the series.
Yeah, I think that you really hit the nail on the head, and we've actually been talking about that a little bit today. Is that Ben's whole mission in this show is to pull her back to what he sees as normalcy, and to pull her back into the family unit, and to try and keep it intact. And so I think that's really interesting because in juxtaposition,
Yes.
in your world,
Yes, Ivy is very much witnessing someone who has done her job and done it very well. But the moment that this, her father is brought up, she sees a completely different side of Melissa that is not as confident, that is afraid, that is scared. And even though she is trying to get that story, it's like you are not the only person that is a part of this. Yes, this is your family, this is your trauma, but there is another person connected to it. And I think Ivy does very well to pull her out and say, hey, it's more than just you. It's more than just you. Remember, like you can sit and wallow in it, or you can find a way to heal yourself and other people with this. And it's hard. It's hard being pulled in one way where you're trying to protect the life that you formed,
yep.
and also wanting to help another person out and heal other people. And I feel like that journey that Melissa goes through is the reward of where she is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To that same effect, Tamara, on Ivy's kind of character development throughout the series, it kind of feels like in the beginning, she's just kind of doing her job more so than being maybe an ally or a friend. Can you kind of just talk to me about like how you approach that and how like the script, I guess, maybe kind of played out that character?
Yes, in the beginning, she is very much trying to get the job done. I mean, true crime is her career, and I think she sees this as an opportunity to push in a new sector, or just be able to get a lot more close to it and unfold it a lot more than probably previous segments. And I think what I love so much about the journey is that being so close to the person who is experiencing this firsthand, who is literally in connection to this person and going through the journey with them, allows her to kind of unfold and let go and say, hey, I can shape this story as much as I can, but this is another person that is learning to process and deal with it. And I have to have a level of empathy. Allow her to I have to allow her to heal. I can't heal for her. And what does that mean? Does that mean she steps into interviews and takes a little bit more of the reign? Does that mean she connects with the other victims? How does Ivy allow her to become who she is?
Mm.
Yeah.
The first question can be for both of you. I was just wondering what your experience like was on set, especially compared to, you both are childhood actors, what it was like compared to other sets you've been on. Khiyla, you can start if you want.
Yeah, this set specifically was amazing. The crew was phenomenal. It was really special to work with them. They were all great, and we really formed special relationships with a lot of them. The people were amazing, especially because the subject matter was pretty heavy. We like to keep it light in between scenes, and our crew and cast really made that easy for us.
Benjamin, how'd you like it?
Yeah, I like it too, because offset, we like go in this little booth and we talk, and it feels like a real family. We feel like all a real family. And then on set, we have a lot of fun and it feels like a real family. And then like we hang out and stuff.
Hopefully more of a maybe a less toxic family. Kyla, on that same trajectory. So you have one of the best, I would say, subplots of this first season of the series, right? As Melissa's daughter, you kind of have this whole like romance, discovery. You really are a vessel for a lot of the storytelling, especially as an audience member, kind of like learning as we go. So just talk to me a little bit about your character's arc. You don't have to get too spoilery or anything, but just maybe like how you went into each and every day.
Yeah, Hazel's character arc was pretty big. She's a very layered character, and she goes through a lot of experiences, like you said, with romance and difficult times at school, like bullying. Of course, finding out that her grandfather is the happy face killer. And she really goes through a self-discovery in a way and really finds her identity and who she is near the end of the series, which was a really beautiful moment.
Yeah. I really liked when she stood up for what was right, or just at least stood up for herself. One last question for you, Benjamin. How do you think that this show compared to some of your past work? You know, this is it's a pretty serious show, right? Like here, and I'm curious kind of how that was for you.
I think I like this show because it's like based on a true story. It's pretty cool, and it's pretty crazy to think that this was a true story. And I just like the story, that's all.
Same kind of question to you, Kyla. Like compared to some of your past work, different series, movies, like how did this set compare, especially just in terms of, 8 episode arc? Obviously, it's kind of a longer season. The episodes range from like 50 to an hour. How did that process go?
Yeah, this series was definitely different from anything I had ever done. It's very serious, and it was really important to me that I did a project like this, especially within true crime and how the series is through Melissa's point of view. It was also really nice to work with so many different directors, which is something that I had never done before. We had 7 different directors in our 8 episode series, which
Hmm.
was pretty special. They were all phenomenal and really great to work with, so that was pretty cool.